Conscious living is fashionable, but if you understand it, it's aligned with true success, positive thinking, flow behaviour, confidence, and a lot more besides. So here are 3 conscious living tools, specifically kissing consciousness tools, to help you be much more effective at it. The illusion of identical experiences will help you to identify the right action to take. The paradox of love consciousness will allow you to unlock a common psychological bind which prevents us from being effective. And the illusion of grey consciousness will help you to be much more true to yourself. So here we go then, 3 kissing consciousness tools, and we're going to start with the paradox of love consciousness. So to understand the paradox of love consciousness, we first have to become familiar with the 2 different states that each of us live in any given moment. In any moment, any human being is going to be either in a state of self-acceptance or a state of self-constriction or self-judgment. And if you may know that kissing consciousness calls these 2 states love consciousness and fear consciousness. And of course, if you look at some of the characteristics that I was talking about in the introduction there, you've got things like positive thinking, confidence, flow behavior, ease, being true to yourself, being at one with yourself. All these kind of qualities are the qualities of love consciousness, and they're very desirable things. So it's understanding that people would want to be in a state where they're in the given moment where they're experiencing those kind of things. Conversely, you have fear consciousness, which is the state of lack of confidence, not being true to yourself, self-doubt, negative thinking, forced behavior, all kinds of things like that, complete opposites to the love consciousness column. And so people understandably get to a point where they have resistance to being in fear consciousness and they get attachment to being in love consciousness. Now, the trouble with that is that there's a paradox there, the paradox of love consciousness, which is that when you're attached to the idea of being in love consciousness, you're actually in fear consciousness, because the state of attachment or resistance is one of the characteristics of fear consciousness, and the state of acceptance and self-acceptance is one of the states of love consciousness. So there's a bind there, there's a paradox. So if we have a look at page 78 of the Kissing Consciousness Handbook, we can see a binary table there for love consciousness and fear consciousness. And in the love consciousness state, it's not minding whether you're in a state of love consciousness or fear consciousness, whereas in the fear consciousness state, you're having attachment to being in a state of love consciousness and resistance to being in a state of fear consciousness. And we also can say the moment you stop fearfully needing to jump across to the love consciousness path, it moves itself underneath your feet. So that's the theory of the paradox of love consciousness. So what's going on in practice? Well, often what happens is, even if people can understand that they don't want to be in a state of attachment or resistance, they get into that state because they're resistant to feeling something. There's some kind of emotion or feeling which lurks the other side of them facing up to whatever it is. So for whatever reason, they're attached to trying to be in a state of self-acceptance or resistance to whatever fear consciousness they may have. That emotional block is stronger for them. So in Kissing Consciousness, we call this the elusive emotion. And so the way to undo the paradox of love consciousness is to be willing to face and feel the elusive emotion. And that's why that tool also comes hand in hand with emotional infinity, because you kind of reverse engineer this back. You can't do the paradox of love consciousness because you're resistant to feeling the elusive emotion, and you can't face the elusive emotion because you don't have infinite emotional capacity to deal with such things. So then you start by understanding how to deal with emotions, which is by allowing the mind to be what it is, allowing the body to be what it is, and allowing them both to deal with emotions however they see fit, which is something we've gotten out of the habit of, because people will tell you, growing up, they'll tell you things like don't cry, or you shouldn't scream or shout, all that kind of thing. So the way we naturally deal with emotions has been repressed. So if we undo all that bad teaching and bad conditioning, learn to get comfortable with our emotions, then we can face whatever elusive emotion it is relating to our paradox, why we're stuck in attachment. And it might be something we don't want to face or fear. But once we have that emotional basis for dealing with that, we can feel into it. And you might not want to feel a sad emotion or an emotion that makes you feel afraid, but at least it's going to unlock you from the fear consciousness, and it's going to get you back into a state of love consciousness, so you can actually start to operate effectively rather than keep being knocked around by the effect of this paradox. So here's how I explained it all in the Kissing Consciousness Handbook on page 77. Given all these amazing characteristics and outcomes of being in the state of love consciousness, it's understandable that people may get attached to being in it and resist being in the state of fear consciousness. But this attachment and resistance is a trap. By wanting love consciousness, you're in fear consciousness. The paradox of fearing and resisting being in the state of fear consciousness is that it puts us in it, while being willing to be in that state, and if need be, releasing that resistance to it, puts us in the other state of love consciousness. By definition, love consciousness is all about allowing things to be the way they are and accepting that they are the way they are, even if one of the things you're accepting is a thing you wish to change. Having an attachment to being in a state of love consciousness or a resistance to being in a state of fear consciousness therefore inevitably makes love consciousness impossible. It's impossible to fear your way into a state of love consciousness. The only thing that releases you from the attachment resistance trap is catching yourself in awareness and letting go of the attachment resistance. And then, by virtue of having no attachment to the state you're in, you're back in the state of love consciousness. So that's the paradox of love consciousness. And I also mentioned the elusive emotion in there and the quality of emotional infinity. There's also a video on the Kissing Consciousness YouTube channel about emotional infinity, how to handle emotions, how to deal with your feelings, that you can find on the channel as well to help you with that. Onto the illusion of identical experiences then, and this is all about recognizing that when we think of different physical activities or behaviors that we can do, whether it's reading a book, going for a walk, exercising, sleeping, working, any of those things, and all of the sort of detail activities in between, literally anything that we do on a physical activity or behavioral level, we tend to think of these things as individual activities, but they're actually two different experiences of them, depending again on whether we're doing them from a state of love consciousness or a state of fear consciousness. So if you think about going for a run to exercise, you might do that from a state of love consciousness, from self-acceptance, because it's what feels right to you in the moment. It's what your body's asking for. All those kind of factors are at play in making it the right thing for you to be doing in that given moment. But then you can conversely look at the example of a moment when you might be doing that from fear consciousness. Maybe you're tuning into your body, it's saying it doesn't want to be doing that. You're also, in your mind, you're analysing what tasks you've got to do, and you've got other things to do, so it's not appropriate to be going for a run. But maybe you've got some self-judgment going on that's putting you in fear consciousness, telling that you have to do that, or it's the right thing, or it's mistakenly convincing you that it's the right thing to do. So you're talking about two completely different types of experience here. But if people don't recognize the difference between the two, then they're always going to think they're generic things, like going to exercise is always the same as going to exercise any other day, or working is always going to be the same as working, or celebrating is going to be the same as celebrating. You might go for an evening meal one night and it's fantastic because it's the right thing to do, everything's flowing. You might try that again the next night and you could have a completely different experience, even though you're doing the same thing, spending the same amount of money, but the actual quality of life isn't going to be there in the same way. So in Kissing Consciousness, in a binary table, the way we explain this is the content of the table is identical in each instance, but it's the heading of the content that informs us as to what's going on. So the difference is whether it's under love consciousness or fear consciousness, and we can get an understanding of those two things. And then when we understand all that, of course, we can then see that rather than focusing on behavior and activity as a way of living, so what I call behaviour-primary strategies, or even thought-primary strategies where you're trying to control your thinking, we actually start with consciousness primary strategies or awareness primary. So the first thing you're looking for is what state of consciousness you're in. Are you in a state of self-acceptance, or are you in a state of self-constriction? And if you take care of that, getting out of self-judgment, self-constriction, and back into self-acceptance, then you're going to find that what you do at a behavior level will flow and be confident and effective and good for your quality of life. So as we look at that in a binary table, then you can see all the different types of opposites. Even though the activity is the same, the heading, as I say, is different. So you can look at things like celebrating, exercising, fasting or feasting, going for a walk, introspecting, meditating, playing, praying, relaxing, resting, saving money, sleeping, or being still. All of these kinds of things are going to have different experiences, positive or negative, depending on whether you're doing them from a state of love consciousness or a state of fear consciousness. And this is from page 82 of the book. As we go down each item in the list, we can get a sense of what each activity would be like if we did it from our being, from self-acceptance and flow, at one with ourselves, compared to what it would be like doing the same activity from a place of self-judgment, being at odds with ourselves, going against our inner knowing, in our heads, with the nagging thought that actually this isn't what we really want to be doing right now. Whenever we're doing something from self-judgment, there's always a nagging dissatisfaction at the back of, or even near the front of, our minds, as we're left semi-consciously thinking about how we're not feeling good or right about this, or about what we'd rather be doing, or how we'd prefer things to be. We're sentient enough to feel unhappy, uncomfortable and pissed off, but not conscious enough to wake up to the realization that we can choose something else. And here's an example of how that might play out. You might rest for 10 minutes because you need a rest, but then carry on resting even after you get bored and have an urge to do something else, perhaps because you have an unconscious self-judgment that you're not allowed to do whatever the something else is. Just like that, the experience of resting changes. It was congruent resting, and now it's incongruent resting. Maybe last night you feasted and it was fantastic, and you hope that if you feast again tonight, you'll get the same level of joy in the experience. But you don't get the same quality of experience, because where last night your feasting was spontaneous and responsive, tonight you're trying to make it flow, even though you know it's not flow. It's not the same experience, even though the activity is the same. So this is the veil of all experience, an invisible curtain that imbues all experience with either the tint of light of pure being, or the shadow of unconscious unhappiness and self-judgment. Understanding this isn't so much about defining each individual example or moment, as it is about understanding the whole tapestry of a way of being in which we are tuned to living in the light and flow of love consciousness, and not in the darkness and shadow of fear consciousness. And here's a great quote which I enjoy and put into the book, the words of Josh Levin: "My favourite thing to do is not a what, it's a how." And when I saw him write those words, I knew immediately that he was referring to what I'd termed as the illusion of identical experiences. And so we come on to the illusion of grey consciousness. And I wonder, have you ever had an experience where you're walking down the road and coming towards you is a person wearing a grey shirt or a grey skirt or a coat, something like that, and when they get close to you, you realise that they're not actually wearing a grey shirt, but a black and white striped shirt, and it's just the illusion that because you were further away it looked grey, and then as you got closer you could see that actually it was black and white stripes. Well, this is the same principle that applies to consciousness when we're talking about a situation that you're dealing with, whether it's relating with your body, your relationships, your career and money, anything like that. Then if you think of love consciousness and fear consciousness as being simple black and white, when people talk about there being grey areas or unclear areas, it's not so much that they're unclear or grey areas. What it is that they haven't looked closely into them, they haven't zoomed in enough. It's kind of like if you think of looking for a place on Google Maps, you start looking at the whole world, then you zoom into Europe or North America or whatever, you zoom closer in, you zoom closer in. You can do this with your consciousness so that you can be more true to yourself. So you're looking to not accept the illusion of grey, but you're moving closer into it to look in more detail at which bits of a topic are true for you and which bits of a topic are not true for you. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're thinking about going to the gym for an exercise session and you don't feel quite right. So you're thinking, oh, shall I go to the gym for an exercise session or shall I stay at home? And you're thinking, well, I don't really feel quite right about going to the gym for an exercise session and such like. So perhaps I won't do that. And then you think, well, I don't really feel right about staying at home and completely doing nothing either. So with an ordinary conscious, somebody would choose one of those two extremes and just either stay at home and do nothing, or go to the gym and force themselves through their normal routine. But actually, if you zoom into that, you can think, well, you can tune into your awareness to what's true for you. So let's see. I don't feel like going to the gym, but why is that? What's specifically true for me there? Well, I don't feel great. The idea of going there and doing what I normally do doesn't feel like something I can manage today. Okay, so do you feel like staying at home? Well, no, I don't feel like that either. Okay, so what's going on? Zoom in. Okay, well, maybe I'd like to go to the gym and see what I can do. Not try and do everything I normally do, but take it easier and see how I go. Okay, so now you've got a compromise, or not so much a compromise, a more detail, more accuracy to what's true for you. So then you go to the gym, maybe you try one of the pieces of equipment, similar kind of thing. Okay, how do I feel? You're tuning in each moment, what's true, what's not true. And you can do similar kind of thing for a relationship. If you don't want a black and white decision between, okay, I definitely have to leave this relationship or definitely stay in it. You might want to zoom in and get more nuance as to what parts are true for you. Are you willing to put up with something from a partner? Okay, maybe that's not a clear yes or no as well. Maybe you have to zoom in further. It's like, well, okay, maybe I'm willing to put up with it if they make an effort, or if they don't make an effort, I'm not. And then you can zoom in again. What kind of detail of effort would you be happy with, and what kind of effort would you not be happy with? And these are things that you can just practice. You can zoom in, you can tune into the nuance and the detail of what's true for you to help you be much more true to yourself. And that's going to help you get good results in life, because if you don't do that, you're just going to make large lump, more, what's the word I'm looking for? Just binary one or the other decisions in situations which don't suit that and require much more sophistication to your awareness as to what exactly you want to do, how exactly you want to tackle that kind of situation. And so what's happening here is effectively you're having a conversation with your own conscience, your own true conscience, as to what's true for you. And here's how I explained this in page 270 of the handbook, specifically an example. Another example could be around doing some work. So here's how the conversation would go with your conscience. I'm having resistance to working, so is it true that I don't want to work? No. Okay, so if it's true that I do want to work, and yet I'm experiencing resistance to working, is it true that the way I'm approaching the work is influenced by my self-judgment? Yes. Okay, so I do want to work, but not in this way, correct? Yes. Okay, so what's wrong with the way I'm approaching the work? I'm approaching it from the mindset of wanting to get it done, rather than enjoying it in the moment. Okay, so I need to allow myself to enjoy it in the moment, yes? Yes. And not be attached by the outcome, yes? Correct. And so your body can feel through each individual aspect of your awareness as you consider all the various ins and outs of any situation, and let you know which individual bits are true for you and which are not. The key is that rather than reacting to a feeling, you hold presence to it, and so can receive its message for you. So to finally pick up on that then, using your body as a tool as to how it feels is a great way to help you in practice to do this zooming in, to go from the grey consciousness to zoom in to see things in much more black and white detail. Because as each and every aspect of a topic arises, as each little decision, maybe you're having a conversation with someone, you can feel into your body how it's feeling. Is it feeling relaxed about a certain decision or a certain conclusion? If it's not true for you, then you might be feeling a bit tense in your body and holding like that. So then you can sort of recognize the little signs in your body to help guide you to what's true for you. Just feel into that and then get into the practice of that, and then you can do this much more effectively to move through any kind of topic or conversation, quickly reacting to how your body's feeling, so you're recognizing that something is either true for you or not true for you. So there's 3 really powerful kissing consciousness tools to help you with your conscious living practice. And if you do apply those, I'd love to hear from you. If you've got any thoughts or any experiences, how you've got on applying those, I'd love to hear. If you'd like to put your comments below and share, then it'd be great to hear from you. And something that else might help you as you're getting into these tools, I'd like to offer you the first 2 chapters of the Kissing Consciousness Handbook absolutely free. You can get those at kissingconsciousness.com/chapters. And of course, that's going to get you into the topic and the way kissing consciousness works very quickly. The first chapter will explain the difference between simplicity and stupidity, which are both qualities or equal opposite qualities of love consciousness and fear consciousness. And the second chapter moves into the power of love, so it helps you understand exactly what specific type of love can be harnessed to be true to yourself and be more effective in everything that you do. So as I say, you can get that at kissingconsciousness.com/chapters. And also, if you'd like help with me one-to-one, you can look into that, see if that's possible. Make an inquiry there at kissingconsciousness.com/coaching. So good luck with any of that, whatever you choose to do. And I'll see you again. Take care.